This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello and welcome to episode number 104. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 14th of September 2008. Nice to have you with us. Every project manager has a boss whom he or she reports to. At the end of the year, this boss is pretty much responsible for our performance review and decides whether or not we get an increase in salary. But during the year, most of us are very much wrapped up in our own projects. We all have deadlines and budgets to meet, customers and stakeholders to satisfy, risks to manage, and then there are always these pesky project team members that are acting up and not delivering what they're supposed to be delivering. So what do our bosses do during all this time? Do they just sit back, sip coffee, and enjoy the fruit of our labor when we then successfully deliver the project end result? Wayne Turmel from the Cranky Middle Manager Show doesn't think so. He thinks that the role of our boss is more along the lines of, but why am I going to tell you this right now? Why don't you just keep listening and then hear him tell it in his own voice? We also announced the winners of the MPMM giveaway, where two of you are winning a copy of this project management methodology. And there is also a gizmo for all you would-be project management bloggers out there. Today's episode is sponsored by Project Insight, 100% web-based project management software. PMI research found that 52% of project teams are a mix of professional project managers and non-project managers. Project Insight bridges the gap with a solution that is robust enough for savvy project managers, yet easy enough for the entire team. To find out more, please visit projectinsight.net. Okay, so who are the two lucky winners of one copy each of MPMM, a project management methodology that's based on worldwide standards of project management, meaning the PMBOK guide, as well as Prince 2? Well, first of all, we have Frank, and I'm going to mess up your name, I'm sorry, Frank Schleicher from Austin, Texas, and he is one of our free podcast listeners, so he sent in an email. And then, as you know, we also have the premium subscription, and anyone who is subscribed to the premium subscription automatically gets added to our promotional giveaways. And this time round, Pavani Banu is the lucky winner from the premium subscribers, so congratulations to both of you. Before we now move on to today's gizmo, let me remind you that I am now on Twitter. Twitter is a social networking site. If you have a Twitter account, then you can follow what I do day in and out. Go to the PM Podcast and you will find my Twitter link in the left-hand navigation. And just between you and me, there's currently a special deal that I'm giving to all the people who are following me on Twitter. So go and find out. And now I have another gizmo for you. Are you studying project management and you would like to share your experience in a blog, but you don't really know how to get started with blogging? Here is Josh Nankiville, who has a solution for you. Hello, Josh. Welcome to the Project Management Podcast, and thank you very much for presenting your gizmo to us today.
Well, thank you for having me on, Cornelius.
Over the past 2 years, you have been an avid blogger, and that's over at PM Student. Now, you have told me that you have opened up this blog to other people so that they can join in and blog on the site with you. What's your goal with this move?
First of all, I'd like to just say that I'm not planning on stopping blogging there, so it's been a great thing for me, and I'm going to keep doing that. But when I was a student the blogging was a wonderful way for me to clarify what I was learning in school and figure out how to apply it to my job, to my day job. And I met a lot of students and practicing project managers that I work with great ideas. We've had great philosophical discussions about ways to implement certain aspects of project management. And I just kept thinking, geez, this person needs a blog. But it's one of those things where not a lot of people are familiar with blogging or really want to go and set up their own blog to do something like this. So I want to give them an easy way to express their thoughts and their lessons learned to everybody without the hassle of setting that up for themselves.
Are you just looking for student bloggers? After all, the site is, PM Student, or can anyone join?
Yeah, it is PM Student. It is primarily the goal is to provide value for students, but at the same time, anybody can join and write for us. When I say students, it could be at a university, it could be somebody who's just new to the field, and is an aspiring project manager who wants to get their PMP, something like that. But really, I'm looking for students who don't know anything about project management and just want to learn. Veterans with decades of experience that want to share their lessons learned and know that when they write a post, they're going to have lots of newer project managers or students looking at that and getting value from it.
What are the benefits for someone who's interested in blogging on this platform?
Well, I think there's quite a few, and a lot of this has come from just the benefits that I've gotten out of it over the last few years. There's personal development. Just writing helps clarify your own ideas and facilitate the learning process, really get to the point where you internalize what you're learning and figure out how to apply it to your job and that kind of thing. It's really good for community and networking opportunities, just becoming engaged with a group of like-minded people and getting into that groove. As far as mentoring goes, if you're somebody who's an experienced project manager, writing to share your lessons learned can really kind of help you sharpen the saw by reliving those experiences and sharing them with others. You can use that as a way to market yourself. You can send links to potential employers, clients, etc., in a resume or a cover letter to stand out. Each writer on PM Student gets their own URL that they can, use in their resume or a cover letter and say, hey, look what I've written, and they can get an idea of who you are and what you're about beforehand. The other nice thing about a blog is just motivation, because it gives you an expectation on yourself that, I need to go out and write some content. I need to think about project management, and it really gets you motivated to write. I
know this is a brand new thing for you. How many people have signed up already?
We've got 30 contributors registered so far.
Wow, that is a wonderful success for you.
Yeah, we've got I think three people have submitted articles so far, I'm very happy with it, and I'm hoping to get quite a few more.
I assume all it takes is go to the website and sign up, and then everything is pretty much on autopilot, right?
Yep, you just click register in the top right-hand corner. It'll walk you through the process. You can start posting immediately.
Wonderful. And now let's move on to the most important question that I have for you, and that is, where can they enroll? Where can our listeners enroll to start blogging with you?
Just bring up your browser and go to www.pmstudent.com and click register in the top right-hand corner.
Great. Josh, thank you very much for being here today, and best of luck with your blogs.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
As always, here is our Gizmos disclaimer. We do not endorse the gizmos that we present in this segment. We just want to tell you that they exist, so please use your own judgment. The companies and individuals who are presenting a gizmo here do not pay us for the privilege. And now, our main topic, the discussion with Wayne Turmel from the Cranky Middle Manager Show about what the role of our bosses in regards to project management really is. The Cranky Middle Manager Show is an irreverent but insightful look at the world of, middle management. Wayne Turmel vents and offers humorous commentary and talks to the smartest people in the field about management techniques, career strategies, and just keeping it together day after day. If you ever feel stuck between what he calls the idiots that make the decisions and the morons who won't do as they are told, then this show is definitely for you. Enjoy. Hello, Wayne, and welcome to the Project Management Podcast.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to be here.
You mean finally? After what? 3 years it took us at least?
Yeah, we connected right after the Cranky Middle Manager started, and boy, it was nice of you to hurry up and make that happen.
All right. Well, let's forget about the past. We'll just call it
scope creep and move on.
Let's forget about the past and focus on the present. No, actually, let's go back to the past. Tell us a little bit about the Cranky Middle Manager there. Why do you call it the Cranky Middle Manager Show, and how did you come up with it? I mean, you obviously must be a Cranky Middle Manager yourself.
Boy, I spent a lot of years as a middle manager, and what happened as I was working with my client companies is I noticed that there were a lot of managers who were feeling stressed. And these were good people. They were working hard. They generally had a pretty good attitude. But every once in a while, you could kind of see the cracks in the facade. And what the Cranky Middle Manager Show does is, I think, it gives us some humor. It gives us a chance to vent, because these managers aren't bitter. They're not angry. They're not cynical and twisted. They're trying really hard, but sometimes you get a little cranky being squeezed in the middle. Plus, cranky's just a funny word.
Yes, it is.
And there must be something. I must be doing something right, because there are now 2 other podcasts out there, or blogs. One is the Cranky Product Manager, and one is the Cranky something or other. So, if imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, then by golly, here we are. But really, it just kind of talked to the mood of the show. We have some fun, but we also look at the serious things that managers face, particularly those of us that are in the middle of organizations.
Yeah, and I'm considering to change the name of my show to the Cranky Project Manager.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would not be surprised if there was more than an audience full of those.
Yeah. So you're saying that managers get cranky because they're in the middle, and because they get the pressure from the top and they get the pressure from the bottom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also something else, and this is particularly true of project managers, is that most of us who find ourselves in middle management and not fast-tracked for the executive suite were really good at what we did. We were really good individual contributors. And what happens when you move to management is you're asked to do all these things that have nothing to do with what you were good at, and you're not allowed to do the parts of the job that you really liked.
Makes a lot of sense. I've been there.
And I don't think everybody is necessarily prepared for that reality.
Right. I fully agree with that. When I took on my first it wasn't middle manager, it was lower manager position. I was suddenly thrust into having to do all these things about, dealing with HR and caring for people's health and inputting information into the management by objective system. And nobody told me about this before. It's just, it's expected that you do this now on top of your regular work.
Well, it's funny. The seeds for this were planted years ago when I was working with a client, and they asked us to do some training for their new managers. And this is one of Fortune's 100 best companies to work for. Really great company who really gets it. But a third of the people who left the bench to become managers were back on the bench in less than 6 months.
Wow.
And I asked one of them, I said, why? I mean, you get more money and you're a manager and that looks good on the job title. And they said, and I'll never forget this, he said, because code does what you tell it to do the first time and you don't have to ask how the kids are.
Ouch. Yes.
And that's when it hit me.
Uh-huh.
That nobody really tells the truth about the transition, that a lot of companies appoint you. You're the best widget maker we've got, so we're going to make you the boss of the widget makers.
Yeah. And that happens just way too often.
Well, coding is a perfect example. What makes a good coder? You spend years in a dark room with your mother sliding food to you under the door because you've got these great powers of concentration and, you can do 17 hours on Red Bull and Skittles. But then when you become a manager, you get no time to yourself, and you spend your entire time interacting with other people. And by the way, you never touch a line of code.
Yeah, and that can be very, very frustrating. Yes, I fully agree.
Well, and it's the same thing with project managers. I'm surprised at the percentage of my audience who don't have actual direct reports, but they are project managers, and they are working in matrix organizations or virtual teams where they have no hire fire responsibility over people, but they have no authority, but they have all of the responsibility of making stuff happen.
Yes. I think we've laid a good foundation here for our discussion today. I mean, we've defined what a cranky middle manager is and why they're cranky. Let's now move on and talk about those managers who have project managers reporting to them. Because from our point of view as the project manager, we go to our manager and all we get is pushback and usually scope increases, and we don't get the budget that we need. So let's talk a little bit about this situation from the point of view of the manager. So let's take you as the example. I believe you've had project managers reporting to you, right?
Oh, heavens, yes.
Okay. Let's start out with this right away. Why did you say, oh, heavens, yes? Why didn't you just say yes?
Well,
there must have been something that went wrong.
There is a challenge in project work that's different than just having people do tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of exponential. You know, the project manager has X number of people that they're interacting with. Well, if I have two project managers working under me, for example, if my department has two projects going on simultaneously, it's not just that number of players times two. You know, it's more exponential than that because there are all of the stakeholders for both of those projects, and sometimes they're the same people and sometimes they're not. And so being the manager of those two project managers, you need to be the one with your eyes out on the landscape for what's going to impact and get in the way of those teams. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest thing, I think, about middle management is that you need to have peripheral vision that the project managers don't need to have.
Is it your job? Shouldn't you, as the manager of the project manager, say, ma'am or sir, I hereby give you all the powers that you need. Go forth and finish your project.
Absolutely, but it's got nothing to do with power. One of my guests on my show, he wrote a book called The Dream Manager. His name is Matthew Kelly. And he said something that absolutely stopped me in my tracks, Cornelius, because it summed up one of the major difficulties of management, and it gets very seldom articulated in the lovely handbook that they give you. We are paid for the amount of time that we are responsible for. And I'll give you a very quick example, and then I'll tell you how this applies to project management. If I'm at a restaurant, if my job is to flip burgers and make sure that every 8 seconds stuff goes out the window, that's what I'm concentrating on. That's what I'm incented on. That's what I'm paid for. I'm doing a good job or not a good job based on whether or not those burgers are getting out the door. And by the way, they don't pay me a whole lot to do that, so I have very little responsibility. If I am the team leader, I need to make sure that, yes, the burgers are going out and I'm helping that person make the burgers, but by the way, the restrooms need to be cleaned and the fryer needs to be scrubbed and we have to do certain things. The shift manager is responsible for even more, and they have even more peripheral vision that they have to have because they need to be paying attention to the operation of the store and not just what they are specifically responsible for. Well, if you think of what, and so on up to the general manager, regional manager, all that good stuff. Well, now think about what happens inside organizations. The project manager is given a very clear, in a perfect world, they're given a very clear, defined set of metrics. Here are your resources, and here's your team, here's your resources, go and do. And if I'm a good manager to you, I am empowering you and giving you the tools to be successful. However, You are now focused on those things that you need to be successful. My job is to have the peripheral vision to be able to see when there are things going on in the organization that you can't see because you're busy focused on what you need to do. But I can see scope changes coming. I can see where, you need to do this, but somebody else has a need for that same resource, and we're going to run into a sharing problem here. Mm-hmm. That's my job as your manager, is to constantly be scanning the horizon and, whenever possible, mitigate before things get ugly any problems that are out there and be a resource to you when you need it. But I'm not just dedicated to your project. I've got 1, 2, 3 other people out there all with the same set of needs. And it's very easy for me to jump down in the weeds and help you on your project because, by the way, that's the part of the job I really liked, and I will take any excuse to do it.
Don't we all?
But that's what I get paid to do.
Okay, I see where you're coming from, right? So you, as my manager who I'm reporting to with my project, you're supposed to make sure that you see the things from your high tower up there that I, from the bottom of the building, am unable to see. Wonderful. Okay, let's say we have these competing resources, which, funny enough, we always have them on projects, don't we? How do you deal with them as my manager? How do you help me get the resources that I need? What is your tactics here?
Well, in some cases, my job is to go and bust heads. You know, if you're not getting the resources from IT that you need to accomplish your project, my job is to gird up, tilt the windmill, and go in there and do what I need to do to make sure you get it. Mm-hmm. That having been said, sometimes my job is to explain why you're not getting that resource until next month, because there's a whole company to run here, and it's not just about your project, and you're not going to get in trouble. Here are the things that we've done. Here's what we can do in the meantime. Let me help you see what other tasks can be accomplished in the meantime, and help literally manage, not necessarily do, but literally manage the pieces of that. I think that a really underrated piece of the manager, of the project manager's job, is the good flow of communication, and that's both ways.
You know, what you're telling me is very interesting because it completely contradicts my career. Absolutely.
Now, how's that?
In my career, my managers have usually not done what you have just told me. It has always been my responsibility to go and deal with resource issues. In some cases, I was working for an internet startup company. We were about a dozen or so project managers. We dealt with these resource issues among each other. If I needed a resource that project manager X needed as well, we worked on this together. We figured out how are we going to manage these resources and make it work for the whole company. The department head did not get involved, right? If they were
now, was that good or bad?
That was fabulous. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, I didn't say that I wouldn't on occasion say, well, go talk to George and figure it out. Mm-hmm. But if there are things that needed to be done, if there was guidance that needed to be offered, that's my job. Okay. Is to clear the landscape and make it as easy and facilitate what you need to get your project done while everybody else is getting their project done.
Yes. Okay. But that means to me that you have a limitation of project managers that you can actually lead. In my case that I was just telling you, our department head, he had 12 project managers reporting to him, right? There is no way that he could take over all those different coordination efforts and trying to get the resources figured out himself for 12 PMs. Just no way. So in your case, what would you say? What is the maximum number of project managers that you might be able to lead in that particular?
12 is a bunch.
Yeah.
But remember, I'm not saying that I'm going to get down in the weeds on every one of those projects.
Okay.
I mean, it's important to recognize in a perfect world, you want to empower your folks. It's when you have to step in, when you see something coming, and it's a whole lot easier to head things off at the pass, check in with your project managers, and see what's going on out there that you can clear out of the way or help facilitate or help coach your project managers to get through before it becomes something that you have to step into.
Okay. Before it gets something that you need to step into, leads us right into accountability here. Where do you see your accountability as the manager of a project manager? The books always say the project manager is ultimately responsible for success or failure of his or her project. How do you see that as my manager? Are you responsible for the budget? And are you responsible for staffing? Are you responsible for the failure of the project? How does this work? Where do you see the sharing of this responsibility?
You know, and what I'm going to say sounds like I'm sidestepping the question, but in fact I'm not. It really depends on how the company sets up the actual accountability, firing, hiring, who's responsible for the budget. Okay, so my job is to make sure that the projects under my guidance and the various project managers on a macro level, if my department has 3 projects going on, my accountability, what I'm held responsible for to the company, is for my division, everything that happens in my division. And if 2 of those projects go great and one of them runs off the rails, I am certainly held accountable for that on some level.
Yes.
Now, politically, I have a little wiggle room, because if your project really knocks it out of the park and you do great and you're under budget, that hides a multitude of sins on another project.
Yes, it does, because you...
in there. And you know, you can't deny the real politic of the workplace.
Yeah.
You absolutely cannot deny that. That's where a lot of project managers get into trouble, is because they valiantly believe that they're working in a vacuum, and as long as their project goes according to Hoyle and everything falls in the way it was budgeted, it's going to work. Doesn't work that way. So the accountability, certainly in terms of that particular project, a great deal of that accountability falls to the project manager. But I have my share of that. And if I cannot explain to my boss what's going on, where are we with this, why are we wherever we are, I am on the line for that as much as the project manager be or should be. Now, a lot of organizations are set up, I can throw you under the bus to save my job.
Yes. Has happened before.
It has been known to happen, indeed. But I always took my responsibility very seriously, that I am, in fact, responsible for the success of every project and accountable for the success of every project under my umbrella.
I'd like to give you a quote of a friend of mine. He recently moved from Tucson, Arizona to Seattle, Washington to take over a new division up there. And he's now sort of a project management office manager. He's changed positions internally, and he now has project managers reporting to him. And I asked him, so what's it like? And he gave me kind of the same response as you did at the very beginning. And he said, well, I really wished that these project managers would use the same vocabulary across the board, that they would please use the same software version, that they would use the same kind of reporting system, even if it's just the same template, that they don't think my way is the best way. So how do you read these things? Same vocabulary, different software versions, different reporting systems. My way is the best way. How much did you come across these kind of discrepancies from one project manager to the next who was reporting to you?
You know, the answer is way too often. And
let me in that case apologize for all of us that we're doing this to you.
No. 2 out of the 3 things I completely agree with. The different types of communication, the different tools, those sorts of things can drive you crazy. There is far less excuse for the third of those. And I think the problem is, as the manager of the project managers, were you there at the onset of the project, or are you coming in once they're running?
I think he was coming in already as the projects were going on, right?
Right, and in that case, you inherit what you inherit.
Well, yeah, there's not much you can do, absolutely.
There's not much you can do. What is really important, I think, is that we establish not identical ways of working, because that's impossible. Different groups have different tools. The Seattle office is working on a different set of tools than the Bangalore office. Okay, fine. But I think that as a project gets started, it's important that I set out my expectations about how things are going to be communicated. What version are we going to do this in? Because I have that peripheral vision. I might not know, or I would know, that the Bangalore office has moved to Microsoft Office 2007, but ironically the Seattle office hasn't. I should know that. There's no reason that the two project managers would know that going in.
Right.
So I need to set the expectations of how do I expect to be communicated with. I ask you, what's the best way to communicate with you? How often do you want me to check in? But I will say, you know what, checking in once a week doesn't work for me. I need this and this. You need to set those expectations up front, and when you realize that there are things like different versions, I mean, if your project is working totally independently and isn't impacting anybody else, as long as I can read your documents on my version, I can live with that. But I'm probably, as we're looking at working cross-organization and cross-function, I'm going to want to find what's the lingua franca. What are the things that everybody's going to be able to work with and say, I'm sorry that tool is really cool, but you're going to have to dumb down the visual before you send it to the rest of it. Or we're going to spend 3 days emailing saying, I can't read this, can you put it in a PDF?
Yes, happens all the time, especially if you use Microsoft Project and you send it off to someone. Not 5 minutes later, you get an email back saying, I can't open this. Can you send me a PDF?
Isn't that my job, as we're setting up how this project is going to work, to set those expectations? I'm not just going to pat you on the back and say, go and do, because you're going to go and do the way that you've always done it in the way that's most convenient for your team. It's my job to make sure that the communication is, I know who else needs to be communicated with and what the best way is to facilitate that communication.
Okay.
Those are the kinds of things I should be paying attention to and it doesn't mean I have to get involved other than to say, hey, does everybody have the same version of this? Can everybody see it? Or if they don't, if somebody sends an email back saying, I can't read this, I need to say, look, would you from now on use this version so that everybody can see it? And that should be the end of my involvement.
Yeah, and see, from my point of view, this shouldn't be your job as the manager of the project manager, because the project manager is supposed to set up some kind of a communication plan. And this is supposed to be part of his or her thinking. Okay, what version are we going to use of Microsoft Office? How are we going to distribute these files? Are we having a shared network drive somewhere? Are we going to send them back and forth with email? These are the kind of things that I personally do not expect my manager, you as my manager, to have to deal with. That's what I'm paid for as the project manager. This is part of my stuff. Yes.
Is this your first project or your 27th?
Somewhere between the first and the 27th. It's probably somewhere around the 19th or 20th.
First project, I am going to have much more of a coaching job.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to have much more of a coaching role with a first-time project manager. If this is your 27th project and we're still having this discussion,
yeah,
there are larger issues at work here.
Agreed.
So, I think as we're talking about this, I think it's important to realize, as you've worked together over a time, you develop shorthand, and there are conversations that you shouldn't have to have, and you should be able to say, you know better than that, go solve it.
Right.
And I shouldn't have to get involved in the sandbox. But if it's the first time that two groups have worked together, if it's this project manager is being given her first big project, I would like to think that I have a coaching role there that would be more active than somebody who's an experienced project manager.
I completely agree with you. That makes sense. That makes sense. So let me bring this to a close. And in closing, I would like to talk about expectations from both sides. So let's start out with what you think project managers expect from you, or what they can expect from you as a manager. So if I'm the project manager, what can I expect from you, Wayne, my manager?
What they should expect from me is context. And that is, what are the things going on around the company that make this project go? And that means, why are we doing the project? Why are the outcomes what they are? Why can't we get the resources we need? I need to be able to distill what's going on and communicate that to the project team. And I need to be able to take what's going on in the project team and communicate that to my bosses and the rest of the company. Because, project teams don't just go behind closed doors and emerge 9 months later with the finished project. In a perfect world, they would, but I know that doesn't always happen. So my job is to provide context. It's to take – I'm not going to get too melodramatic about this, and what I'm going to say sounds more melodramatic than it is. My job is to be like the heart. Okay, if you think about the heart, there are 4 chambers. 2 have blood going in, 2 have blood coming out. Information comes to me from the project team. I process that information. We're on time. We're on budget. We're having a little challenge here. I need to process that, oxygenate it, and I need to send it out. Maybe I send it back to the project team and say, go fix this. Here's a couple of ideas, go fix this. Or I need to go out somewhere and actually get involved to help facilitate that. I am also taking information and context in from the larger organization, processing it and passing it on to my project team.
Now let's turn this around. What expectations do you, as a manager, have from the project managers who are reporting to you?
The single biggest thing that I expect from my project managers, and this sounds like a motherhood issue, and it's not, is honesty.
Oh.
I want to know, are there things getting in your way that I don't see? Are there challenges you're having? It might be cross-division. It might be in your own team. It might just be that, you're not getting the numbers in time. But I want to know that before you miss your deadline. If you look at a project timeline, the individual task boxes are pretty clear and people know what's expected of them in there. I think where projects fall down and where they succeed is in between those boxes. What's the communication flow like? Mm-hmm. If I can see a problem 3 weeks away, but I don't tell you about it until the day before because maybe it'll solve itself, I don't want to get somebody in trouble, maybe by some miracle we'll actually get the data, all of a sudden we're late. And that's harder to fix.
Absolutely. So honesty is the number one thing that you are looking for in a project manager.
Honest communication. If I'm giving you timelines and deadlines that aren't realistic, best you tell me now. I don't want you to smile and nod and then wander off and mutter in the lunchroom because I go back to my boss and say, "Yep, we're going to meet that deadline."
Now we're getting into dangerous territory right here because I was just going to give a counter argument saying, but I've had it happen so many times to me where my boss comes to me and says, you're going to have this project finished on the 15th of X month, and there is no arguing about it. Go, go, go. And no matter how much I tell him or her, it's not going to work. They won't listen. But that's a totally different story, and I think that would probably almost be a second whole 1 hour podcast on this one right here.
Can I say something really cynical?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
It's not cynical. I think it's pragmatic. It's one thing for my boss to say it has to be done such and such a date. And you say to me, there's no way on God's green earth it's going to be done until 1 week later. I can do the math and say I can take the hit for a week, but I want to know.
Okay, perfect. Wayne, thank you very much. Very interesting. I had never really thought about what my manager expects from me as a project manager, and the other way around, what my expectations are from my manager and what areas that they are concerned about. So to me, this has been a very, very nice way of getting my mode of thinking a bit away from this, I'm in the trenches. There is item number 1 I have to deliver next week. So, get out of that thinking, stand on top of the tower and look around a little bit as my manager would. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
And that's why your manager makes the big bucks.
All right. Thank you very much for being on the show today, Wayne. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And that was our discussion with Wayne Turmel on the role of our bosses on project management. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. And if you like our podcast, why not forward it to friends, co-workers, project management colleagues, or anyone else who might enjoy it. As always, you can find us on the web at thepmpodcast.com. And if you are a project manager who wants to become PMP certified, then you can visit pmprepcast.com. In our sister podcast, we teach you concepts, tools, and techniques that you need to know in order to pass the PMP exam. Please send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. I would like to review with you the 7 phases of a project. Here they are. Phase 1, wild enthusiasm. Phase 2, disillusionment. Phase 3, confusion. Phase 4, panic. Phase 5, search for the guilty. Phase 6, punishment of the innocent. And Phase 7, promotion of the non-participants. Until next time.